Welcome to EDNA. If you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Kevin, would you like to lead us, being our final hearing?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, thank you, everybody, for attending. Do we have a motion to go into exec?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we've got 13 bills we need to do, and my intention is just to go right in order. That way I don't get confused, unless there's some objections. We will start with House Bill 518.
Okay.
I'll move on to pass.
We have a motion on to pass in a second. Senator Perkins Cook, I believe you have an amendment you want to offer.
Well, thank you, Chair.
Actually, I have an amendment.
I was going to say my amendment's to your amendment, so
That's
I don't
right.
know if you want to move that.
All right, so I'll move Amendment 1601.
I'll second.
And then you had some changes you wanted to make to that. So Kevin, we may have to do a committee amendment here. So we're going to start off the basis of the Amendment 1601.
Yep. So I raised this last week for everyone's consideration, basically on page 3 of Amendment 1601, lines 10 to 23. I would like to see reverted so that they remain in statute for the time being. These are reporting requirements from malpractice insurers and from the court into OPLC, and so the reason they had originally removed them is because they are receiving information from different places, but I think we just need to feel entirely sure that this is duplicative and they are receiving that information from somewhere else. So if everyone's comfortable, I'd like to just leave this as a change we could make next year if needed.
I will support that in conversations I've had with some folks outside of here. It appears that we need to leave that language, and we may even need to look at further changes in the statute for another year, but nothing we're going to try and tackle in this bill. So I'd be supportive of, I guess, unstriking that language from the amendment.
So, as is? Is that your proposal, like just?
Right, exactly.
As is,
Just
yeah.
revert the deletion.
Take the strikes out. Okay.
Correct.
So page 3, lines 10 through 23, we'd be unstriking
Okay.
that language. Kevin, are you clear on that?
Page 3.
Page 3 of the amendment, lines 10 through 23, we'd remove the strikeout.
What about 24 through 27? Because that's also stricken.
That was not needed to be returned from any conversations that I've had.
Okay. Okay.
Director Courtney, are you agreeable to what we were discussing here? That just lines 10 through 23 needed to be returned? Yes. Okay, thank you. Further discussion. So Kevin, we're going to do a committee amendment using 1601, but unstriking lines 10 through 23, removing that strikeout. I don't know which is the proper term, unstriking or removing the strikeout, but either way. Are you clear on that? Okay. Further discussion? All in favor of the committee amendment? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Then I'll move on to pass as amended. Do we have, where did we leave this? Did we have this moved already, or are we starting fresh?
I believe you withdrew, so.
Okay, all right, so I'll move on to pass as amended.
I'll second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay. Move consent.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Senator Perkins Coker, would you like to take this one?
Sure, I'll take it out.
All right, thank you. All right, next up will be House Bill 1059.
I'll move on to pass.
A second. We need to do a committee amendment on this, and we need to change the date on line 9 and 10, from January 12th to May 10th of 24. And Phil Sherman is shaking his head.
Okay.
And if you'd like an explanation, I'm happy to bring Phil up.
Nope.
I'm
I just
sorry,
wanna
could
make
you just say the date again,
May
Chair?
10th of 24.
May 10th.
Yes. And this is to do with some things they passed at their state building code meeting on the 10th. That's kind of the line in the sand. Am I correct, Phil? If you'd like to come up for a sec, you're welcome to. I want to make sure the committee has a good explanation of why we're changing it. Oh, I think you're shut off over here. Try again.
Yeah, I contacted.
Having some mic issues? Apparently, yeah. Hold on just a minute, Phil.
Here.
Making the trip. All right, we got a working microphone for Phil.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. We have two amendments that have been passed since January 12th. One was shifting an energy code thing between the residential code and the energy code. It's simply to coordinate with how the different codes play out. Where we were staying on the old energy code, we had to pick up an amendment that would have gotten lost because we're going to the newer residential code. So it's simply putting it in the right code. It's the exact same amendment that was already there. The other was an amendment submitted by Representative McWilliams, which was approved on Friday, that increases the size of homes that can be built under the provisions for tiny homes. Model code 400 square feet. She agreed to go to 600 square feet, which just increases the number of homes that can be built on those slightly relaxed provisions at a cost savings. So those are the two amendments we're trying to pick up by shifting the date to May 10th.
Thank you, Phil. Everybody good on the committee?
Yep.
All
So
right,
I'm sorry, the amendment on the change in square footage is being adopted within your rules?
We approved it, so we've gone through our entire process. It simply needs to be ratified. So that's what this bill does, is pick it up and ratify it.
Okay.
By changing the date.
We don't have
pick
to
that up.
put Rebecca's,
I'm sorry?
we don't have to put Representative
Nope,
McWilliams.
by
I
changing
see.
the date, we're
Okay.
picking up and ratifying
Okay.
what they passed. Everybody good? So are you clear on our committee amendment will be to change the date on line 9 and 10 from January 12th to May 10th of '24? Okay.
10:59, right?
Yes.
January 12th, yeah.
Move that to May 10th. All right, all in favor of the committee amendment?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Move out to pass as amended.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Did you want to,
Yeah, I just had a
She was
comment on
fiddling
the
with her
vote we
microphone.
voted, if that's all right.
yeah.
I apologize, we'll pull back and do the vote again. I did not see you wanted to comment. I
That's
forgot to
okay.
ask, so
Motion
go
to
ahead.
withdraw the vote?
We'll withdraw the vote.
Okay, or just suspend it for a minute. I know we had quite the conversation about this, and honestly, it's a really difficult issue because, you know, as the Energy Conservation Code affects housing costs and the home builders and just sort of different constituencies within our respective districts, you know, I think it's a tough decision to make. I would have liked to see us get more testimony on the details between the 2018 and 2021 code, but I think unfortunately, I just wasn't able to locate the information that I needed in this conversation to move the 2021 code forward. And so while I think there was a lot of really good testimony and a lot of good arguments made on both sides, you know, I'm willing to support this at this time just because it seems like we want to protect housing from additional upfront costs at this time. And as we learn more about the 2021 code, hopefully we can all move towards that together.
All right, my apologies, I forgot to ask for.
Not at all, Chair. No problem.
Further comments from the committee? All right, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay, move consent?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any volunteers to take this one?
I'll take it out.
Senator General. Thank you, Phil. All right. 1065.
Move out to pass?
Second?
And let's see, we needed, I have not passed it. Kevin, do you have an amendment on this? I think you do. not for 1065.
Yes, well, we had an amendment, 1675 that
thought we-
I brought forward.
Okay, so you brought it. I knew there was, oh, there it is, right there.
I don't,
And,
You don't have it?
one from Damon, I mean, I've got the house ones, but I
Yeah,
don't have a copy of this one.
Kevin, can you make some copies of this? 1675?
It's on a different color
Yeah,
paper,
it's on a
if that helps.
No.
colored sheet.
No.
Do you have it? Okay,
I
can you make a
don't have
couple
it.
copies, please? Thank you.
so I know we're waiting for Senator Kirsten to have the language in front of her, but just as a reminder, this was a change that, everyone who came to the hearing was on board with. We heard from the fire marshal, that this requested change in the amendment was unanimous out of the, I'm sorry, I think out of the building code review board, from my notes, and the fire chiefs were part of that conversation, and so, so this is just a cleanup change that's in my amendment.
So your amendment cleans up in part 3.
Yep.
So I have in my notes, remove part 3 and leave part 4 and use your amendment. So your amendment would be
That's
the new
right.
part 3?
Good remembering, yes, so
I try to write
remove
notes 'cause I don't have a
lines,
good memory.
remove lines 3 through 8 via committee amendment is the
And
note I
your
have.
amendment is replacing lines 3 through 8, correct? That
Correct.
language? Okay, as soon as we get it back, we'll take a look at it.
Okay, so let's see.
Yeah, just. Thank you.
No, these are different statute provisions, so,
All right, thank you.
I got it. I think I already have it.
so the original bill concerns RSA 153.5, and my amendment concerns 674.51, so I think we would remove lines 3 through 8, we would insert my amendment as
Actually, we have to
section
remove lines
2.
1 through 8. Wouldn't we?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, you're right, 3 through 8. My apologies. Because section 4 is still under RSA 153.5.
Right.
Yes, I'm sorry.
And so, yeah, so actually, I think my amendment works the way it's written. Amend the bill by inserting after section 1 the following and renumbering the original section 2 to read as 3. Is correct. And then on top of 1675, we would, by committee amendment, remove lines 3 through 8 of the original bill.
And buildings. So we'd be removing even section 4. We'd be removing lines 3 through 17 if we use your amendment.
It's not how I read it because, like, this is section 1 and 3 and 4 both fall under it.
Right.
And then, so if we remove this, section 1 becomes 4, and then we insert my language here.
No, this all is in section 1, because this is section 2.
Right.
So you'd be removing all of this.
Mine says inserting after section 1.
Okay, and then building, inserting after section 1 the following. Okay, so you'd be leaving,
We'd be leaving this
I'm sorry,
modified section 1.
I'm sorry, you're inserting after section 1. Okay, but we need to remove lines 1 through 8 in the original bill.
I still think
Or
3
3
through
through,
8.
I'm sorry, 3 through
No,
8.
just 3 through 8,
Yeah,
yeah.
if I'm reading it correctly.
You are correct.
Okay, as long as you agree.
Sarah, do you understand what we're doing here?
Do you agree?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it seems duplicative, because section 1 is the state fire code and rules. So it looks like all you're doing is now you're putting this into a new section 2 for local land use and
Correct.
planning. But here in section 4, it says pretty much the same thing.
Is
So-
Marshall Toomey here? He is not.
I know, I wish.
Can we, Mr. Chairman, because I think we need to look at this very carefully,
I think a lot of.
can we just pass this and if there, and maybe talk to the fire marshal and we can do a floor amendment if we need to? Is that okay?
So
Because,
Senator, in my conversation with the fire marshal, I have my notes that we need to
Yeah.
leave section 4, remove section 3, and use her amendment. That was my conversation with the fire marshal.
Okay,
So
my,
I think I'd like to do that, and then if we decide we need another change, we could do a floor amendment. Is that fair? Because that goes with the notes that I've had based on the conversations I've had with the fire marshal.
I just want to make sure that this stays in the state fire code and rules.
See, we would be leaving section 4 in the state fire code and rules. I just want to, I'm proposing we remove lines 3 through 8 of the original bill. Leave lines 9 on, well, 1, 2, and 9 through 18. And then Senator Perkins' Quoker amendment would be inserted as a new section 2, making the effective date section 3.
Okay,
So we'd be having both.
okay.
Okay.
I don't feel, I'd like to talk to the fire marshal myself, so, I can't support it at this point, so.
Okay, and if you find that there's different information that we need than that, we
Yep.
can do a floor amendment. Is that
Okay.
fair?
That's entirely fair.
I'd be willing to support that, but that, in my conversations with the marshal, that was what we had
Okay.
decided on. All right, so Kevin, again, we're giving you another committee amendment. We're gonna use, from the original bill, we wanna strike lines 3 through 8. And then then we will add the Perkins Quokka amendment, which is amendment 1675. And that will be the committee amendment. Okay? All right. Is there further discussion on the committee amendment? Is everybody clear what we are doing? All right. I'm gonna move the committee amendment. Do we have a second?
Second.
Did we move the original bill?
Odd pass.
Yes, okay. I thought we did, but I want to make sure. All right. Is there further discussion on the committee amendment? All right, seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Me,
Okay, so it passes 4-1. And we, so we need to move, you want to move out pass as amended?
Sure.
All
I
right,
move
I will second.
OTPA.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
opposed.
All right, so we'll go 4-1, and
Would you like me to take this out?
sure, Senator Perkins Quokka will take this out.
Okay.
And then we can have a discussion on the floor if we need to change it.
Yep, if we need to, we will.
All right. All right, House Bill 1078 will be the next one. Senator Carson, did you have a motion?
I'll move interim study.
Do we have a second? I'll second. So we had some concerns with this bill, trying to figure out exactly what it would do. And I know Mark Doyle came in from safety, said it would be a huge undertaking and costly, and the state doesn't have the ability to do this. Well, I think in concept, the idea may be well, I'm just not sure we're quite ready for it.
Did you get this amendment?
I do not have an amendment from Mark Doyle.
Okay,
All right, let's take a look at that.
yeah,
I'm sorry, I had not seen this.
Yeah.
okay.
Thank you.
We're supposed to send it in.
Know that, one of the things we discussed in the hearing was looking at a map,
Yes, all right.
showing towers, governance, maps,
Use section 2.
provide access to.
Well, that is what we asked him to do.
Yep.
So I will withdraw my interim study
And
motion.
I will withdraw my second. Because that is the piece we were missing.
Okay, so I will move on to pass on House Bill 1666S.
No, you're moving, House Bill 1078.
Oh,
You're
I'm
moving on to pass?
yes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. And then Senator Carson, you want to move your amendment 1666S?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Senator Carson, would you like to discuss your amendment?
This amendment reflects a discussion that I had. I mean, this, when we talk about this, it is important, but it seemed like we were reinventing the wheel. And that, I think, was the biggest problem. And we had information that they have these maps, they have a lot of this stuff. All they need to do is to put it together. So this amendment allows them to put it all together, and it says to establish and maintain a map, a category, a catalog, collect maps from every municipality, get updates from the municipalities, collaborate with them, provide access to and to the repository for all municipalities. So it hits all the points that we had talked about. And I have to tell you, I was up in the North Country with Senator Gendro last week, and one of the biggest issues is they have gaps in service. And it's really bad when there's an emergency and there's no way to make a connection except on Facebook Messenger. That's bad.
Yeah.
That's bad. There are issues with Canada, and our ability and wavelengths are not allowed to go into Canada, but theirs can come into the United States. We can't fix that. That is something that is currently being looked at by our federal delegation. But we really need to do this so we can find out where those gaps are, and then we as a legislature can help and get rid of those gaps.
Okay. The only question I had for you, Senator, is do you want to change the date in line 17 of the original bill if the Department of Safety is going to do this collection of maps, which is a great idea? Do we want the report that will still be issued to maybe have the benefit of those maps?
Well, if they're going to keep these, they're going to have a comprehensive catalog.
Yeah.
I mean, I would think that that would be available to the public. So, I mean, if you believe that the legislature should have a copy of the report, I don't know what committees, maybe Science and Tech should get copies, and maybe Energy should get a copy. But I wasn't really discussed about a report, but if the committee thinks that a report should be issued.
Well, the original bill, lines 14 through 18 requires a report. Investigate
Yeah.
how to close it and then give a report. That's the date you're talking about.
Yeah, I just, right, the way your amendment is drafted, it would retain this report in lines 14 through 18 of the original bill, so.
So if we could possibly just cross out lines 14 and 15 and just have them issue a report in January 1st, 2025.
Is the expectation of your amendment that the work be done in the collection and organization of all these maps to be done by January 1st? Or just, are you thinking that
Just to
they
have
give
them-
us kind of an update of where it is by January
They could
1st?
give
Got
us
it.
an update.
Okay.
That's fine.
I don't think the January 1st deadline is unreasonable for them to at least provide a report. That gives
because-
them more than 6 months.
Yeah, because they're gonna make the request. The municipalities already, and the counties already have these.
Yeah.
So they're just going to bring them or get them to them, and they're just gonna create a catalog.
I don't have any notes to express that deadline was unattainable
neither.
for us.
No.
All right. Further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Any opposed? Senator Carson, you moving on to pass as amended?
Yes, I am.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Senator Gendro. Further discussion? See, I remembered that part this time.
No further discussion.
All right. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye. Move consent?
Wait a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Senator Carson, would you like to take this one?
Sure. I think this is really gonna help our citizens living up in the North Country.
Let's hope so.
Yep.
All right, next will be House Bill 1079. Is there a motion?
To pass?
Second?
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Seeing none? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'll move consent.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Senator Gendro, would you like to take this one out?
Sure.
All right, that's all the ones I pulled, so let me get some over here. 1080, the LIAC will be our next one, but I gotta pull a few more bills here.
Should be an amendment in your file.
I don't know where Senator Carson went.
I'm literally just, I left my phone right there on the desk.
All right,
I'm
we'll-
just gonna
we need
pull back.
a brief 1-minute recess. But we all know that's Senate time, so it can be 1 minute or 2 or
14,
3.
yeah.
Senator Carson,
I
leave the
did
building.
not see her. Missing in action.
Try not to chew it all the time.
Rebecca.
Kevin, I might suggest any other amendments that you have, just pass them out so everybody can have them as we get into the bills. It's this, which one is this here?
This is 1080.
Thank you.
Kevin, would you give a copy of that to Representative Hill, PC? All right, we are back out of recess. We are going to take up House Bill 1080. Senator Carson, do you have a motion you wanted to make?
I move ought to pass.
All right, do we have a second?
Second?
All right. Whoops, that's 1328. Senator Altshuler, you have an amendment you wanted to bring.
My mic is on. I would like to move Amendment 1531S, which I think you all have a copy of.
We do. I'm just trying to find my original bill, sorry. There we are. There are too many layers of paper in these folders.
Wasn't going digital going to help all that?
All right.
Okay,
Do we have a
so,
second on the amendment?
Rebecca. Thank you.
Second. All right.
Appreciate
Senator
it.
Altshuler, you are recognized to introduce your amendment.
Thank you very much. So the amendment speaks to, and I can go through the sections. We heard, so in line, let's see, 18 and 19, we revert the council back to the larger number as we heard testimony and received communication about the shrinking of the council doesn't necessarily benefit the purpose of the council, and we wanted to be able to include youth from all sections of the state, which, you know, it's easier to do that if we can expand the membership in numbers. Secondarily, on line 24, line 28, and onto the next page, the amendment, the House version takes everything away from all of the different areas that can nominate a student and would put it completely under the House, the Speaker of the House, other than the Senate President could appoint one person. And this reverts it back to the Senate having 7 appointees, the House having 10. And then if you flip over to page 2, 2 members of the, it was suggested by the previous testimony that it would be effective and helpful to have younger members of the House of Representatives be advisors to the group, which is a great idea. However, in speaking with some of those younger members of the group, of the House, they expressed to me that had they been assigned this, it would have been a real challenge for them. You know, one of the youngest members of the House, a year ago was one of the youngest members, was also a law student. So balancing work schedule, law schedule, and a full House schedule, that, you know, he felt like that was an undue pressure and that perhaps we should just put in and preference given to willing younger members of the House so that it opens up the space a little bit
Senator,
more.
what line was that on again?
That's on page 2.
Yep.
Lines 1 and 2.
Oh, 1 and 2. Yeah, I
Yep.
went too far down. Okay.
That rather than assign it, we just, you know, that they'll be asked, and then if it's not possible for them, rather than them feel that they are not able to meet a responsibility, they could pass it off to somebody within that demographic. Then on line 4, the governor's office having 3 appointees, 2 secondary students and 1 post-secondary student, and the Secretary of State's office continue to have their appointees. And then, if we move down to line 20, the new council year beginning in August, the intention, I believe, from what testimony we heard, is that the Youth Advisory Council would like to get a jump on being able to be organized and be prepared to evaluate some of the legislation that comes across, and they are not organizing until late in the fall, early winter, at which point we're putting legislation in January and they're still at their organizational stage. So pushing it back to August gets them, September, October, and November before legislation is filed. And even, in September, there's legislation filed, so there's something to evaluate. And in their charge, they have to hold a conference, I believe, But, so that fall space gives them the time to hold that mandatory conference before they begin the rest of their exploration. And then lastly, this preserves their opportunity to have remote meetings so that all the students don't have to travel at all times. And it also gives them the chance to meet at night at some points if they so desire. And last, if we go back, to page 1, lines 11 through 13. Oh, there's a mistake here. Oh, I see a mistake. My bad. The original intention of the Youth Advisory Council is to give the youth of New Hampshire the opportunity to explore all avenues of public interest. And in the House version, they pared down that which the Youth Advisory Council can discuss. And I see that there's a mistake in the amendment, that it should say, the focus shall be to identify legislation that affects youth, period. And not limit them to just particular topics, so that, what is important this year, there may be new things that crop up. For instance, 4 or 5 years ago, nobody was talking about AI, right? That wasn't an issue. 4 or 5 years ago, we weren't talking about how that's used in schools or could possibly affect safety. So every year there's something new to talk about. There's perennials, but there's also, we want to give them the room to discuss the issues that, the legislature is discussing. So rather than commit them to just 1 or 2 committees. So that is my proposal, to expand the council and give them the freedom to actually look at legislation that affects youth as determined by the youth.
Well, Senator, doesn't this essentially return the committee to almost what it is right now?
No.
It feels like you've taken out the majority of the really impactful changes that the House bill brought to us with your amendment.
Yeah, the House bill cut out the Secretary of State's office, the Senate, and the governor from appointments.
Right.
Well, no one asked us if we want to not do that. And, at the beginning of when I was on the LIAC committee, had a discussion with Secretary Scanlon, and that was not something he was looking for. So I think it's cutting out the governor's office, having the opportunity to do appointments, the Senate and the Secretary of State, to throw it into the House. Then it becomes the House Youth Advisory Committee, not the Legislative Youth Advisory Committee. So, that's why should we be margined out of this? And then secondarily, it's a change in the time frame, which is different. And a lot of this, and this bill, the amended by the House, says that when these youth assemble, they may only participate in the Education Committee, the Science and Technology, Transportation, Labor, and a section of HHS. So essentially, they are not empowered to talk about voting, which for this particular group, they're all either just about to be voters or voters, because we have already expanded the LIAC to include post-secondary students, which is great, because we actually have some. I understand and saw firsthand that the LIAC during COVID and post-COVID struggled. That was not because of the LIAC's formulation. It was because the kids were struggling. And they didn't have, we were all struggling. This is something that fell through the cracks. So they wanted a little more structure. I think the structure that some of them asked for is getting a little bit over their skis, because we don't have that kind of structure on any other advisory group.
So I've done a little digging in the interim, because I honestly had very little info or knowledge of the working process of the
Yep.
LIAC since the committee hearing. My understanding of the House and the intent of what they were trying to do was really shake the committee up, because it has not been functioning well. It appears they've missed their filing their annual report at least 5 of the last 10 years, which is kind of a big thing that they have, that they're provided to do. They really only, their last one, they only acted on one bill, the last report they did file. It feels to me like a lot of what you're changing really goes against what the House was trying to do in moving really shaking up the Youth Advisory Council and trying a different format, because what they had wasn't working. I certainly see that there's one part of your amendment, I apologize, I got too many pieces going here. One part of your amendment that I thought might actually make sense about the minority party, the young members of the House. I can see how that could be a challenge. I kind of like your idea of that part of it, lines 1 through 3 on page 2, I think giving preference to them. That makes sense to me, absolutely, because I can understand that a younger person may be struggling with managing their calendar, especially, as many of us did when we were young, especially to add this on. As far as the rest of the amendment, I'm going to really struggle to support it, because I feel like it really goes against the flavor of at that point, we might as well interim study the bill, because I feel like you've taken out most of the changes that the House was looking to make with the bill, if we were to adopt this amendment.
Well, I just want to remind, just to dial back, when you and I both served in the House of Representatives,
Yes.
Representative Marjorie Porter was the LIAC, I don't know what they're calling it. Coordinator,
or
yeah.
representative, I'm not
Exactly. So she was the coordinator, and I think you probably remember, as I do, there, monthly she would come to the well and tell us about the LIAC, what they were up to, when the next meeting was, constantly inviting us to be part of it. So I think that perhaps, I can see how the LIAC lost its way a little bit when they lost Representative Porter, and we have to be very, brutally honest that COVID kind of screwed up a lot of things. There wasn't a lot to do for them at that time. So getting back on their feet, I think what I saw was that they were getting back on their feet, not that they had totally run astray. They needed somebody new within the House structure, since it was going to be, House-led, to guide them. And the governor's office and the Secretary of State has not expressed any interest in not being able to have those assignments available to them. So
I don't believe the Secretary of State has made any assignments, have they? Aren't they? If I'm not mistaken, I don't know that they. Representative Hill, I'm going to actually bring Representative Hill up here, because I think he possesses some information that may be able to help us.
Well, I'm going to let you know that I was called into the Secretary of State's office at the beginning of this legislative session, because the Secretary of State had received some requests and was making an appointment, and was informed by a LIAC member who got, again, over their skis and said that the Secretary of State had not followed the process. There is no process for the Secretary of State to follow, because there were no changes in the law yet. So yes, the Secretary of State's office was entertaining. Yeah, what I'm saying is this needs some guidance, not a complete turnover.
Sure.
It's not dysfunctional because the system is unworkable. It was dysfunctional because it didn't have guidance.
Representative Hill, if you want to turn on your mic, I'll,
Good morning.
I know there's been a couple of major points raised. I guess I'd invite you to offer a little guidance since I know you have a lot of experience.
Sure. For the record, I am Representative Greg Hill. I chair legislative administration in the House that provided the amendment that's before you from the House. And I think I can explain a couple of the changes that the House suggested, namely from a process standpoint. It seemed that the House had taken on the responsibility of filling these positions as we go. I think you have a letter in your file from Deborah Childs, Deputy Assistant Speaker, Coordinator. I'm not sure really what the title is. But the problem that I've been involved with the council since 2010 when my son was the chair. And one of the significant problems that I've had since that time, and I don't believe would be solved by going back to the same scenario as set out in this proposed amendment, is that there are 4 appointers currently, and they are uncoordinated appointers. So if you look at the current makeup of LIAC, or maybe it was the prior administration, there's no one north of the Lakes region. There's no one that represents homeschoolers, I believe. There's no one that represents charter schoolers, I believe. There's no one that represents, and as I say, it may not be this as it particularly stands, but the point is, it's very difficult when you have 4 appointers to fulfill the requirement of having as diverse a community as you can get. It only made sense to have the appointers come from one area. What Representative Porter instituted outside of the requirements or the law, the statute, was an application process. She had the LIAC members handing out applications within their sphere. That's what Secretary of State's office came up against as far as a disagreement. They didn't believe that they should be choosing from a list of applicants. They felt, as they read the statute, that they were able to find these people themselves. So that was the problem they had. When the original statute was written, the governor didn't have his own legislative council as well. And we were careful when we amended 1080 in the House to try to make sure that we weren't, to use your phrase, cutting out the Senate, the Secretary of State. We still wanted input. And in fact, I think we've even written, I don't have the actual bill in front of me, but I think we've actually suggested there still be a Senate assistant. But the idea, I think it is, and I'm glad to see in this amendment the continuation of the idea that the House put forth of additional members, and whether they are the actual youngest people in the House or whether they are the younger members of the House. We're trying to get rid of some of the white hair in the council, I think, more than anything. We actually thought it would be a great way for some of the youngest members to have the ability and the reason to go and expand their horizons and and go and talk with other chairmen in other committees as well. So a learning curve for them as well. As far as the paring down of the areas, that is meant, in my estimation, to be temporary. It seemed to me, and it seemed to the committee, that there were a number of times when I would see youth members, not from the council, come and testify on issues that the council either overlooked or didn't value the way others did. 3 times it's happened in this past year that other youth members, one from Dover, I can't remember where the others came from, came and testified once in transportation, and it was dealing with seatbelts wearing, oh, no, it was dealing with being in a car when parents were smoking in the car. It seemed a logical thing for the Youth Advisory Council to comment on. They were not there. It was the group out of Dover that I mentioned. So this was just merely an idea to refocus the council on specific areas, not give them the universe, because none of us in here focus on the universe of every bill that comes in. We all have our committee focuses, and that's what we thought. It was unfair to say to the council, you're going to look at all of the bills when we don't even do that. We look at individual focuses. So I think it would be perfect. I just wonder if this amendment may be premature. I could certainly see expanding as issues happen, as you correctly point out, things like AI, as they came along. It would be a great idea. But at present, I was just trying to focus it. The big problem they have is the timing of this. As you pointed out, if they are who's going to appoint them for August? First of all, we're usually in that election cycle then. So is it the prior speaker? Is it the new speaker? So that was part of it. The bills only come out or leave the LSR version in late December. So it's very difficult for them to analyze anything between August and December. So everything that has been brought up and mentioned in this, we did think on, and universally and on consent decided that the House amendment was the way to go. So that's where I leave it.
Thank you, Representative. I want to invite the young man up to
Sure.
share a few comments too.
Are we reopening testimony?
No, I'm not. I
Okay.
just wanted his input on your amended changes.
Hello. For the record, my name is James Tebow. I'm the youth co-chair of the Legislative Youth Advisory Council. Apologies, I couldn't be here for the testimony last month. Now, I'm not here to speak on behalf of the council. Obviously, we just got the amendment, so we didn't vote on any statement. But there was an email that went out to all of you regarding changing the date. So that is something that the council does support, just because if we start in December as the House amendment proposes, there's no runway for us to get started. So even if we don't have the bills in front of us until December, we still have those extra months to prepare, to get new members educated about the legislative process, and to just generally give them an idea of how the rest of the year is going to play out. So that's why we supported that. Now, I also authored the original version of this bill, which there is a lot of that in here. And speaking for myself, I will say that bringing back the original size of the council, I think, is a really good idea, because I fully agree with Representative Hill in that we need more geographic diversity, we need more diversity of educational background, and we need more ideological diversity. There is no debate on those fronts, but it's very challenging to do that when you only have 13 members. Mm-hmm. That's very challenging, and especially when the House amendment also said that the council must have one member from each county. Now, if it said there will be one seat allocated to each county, that's one thing. Because then if you can't fill that seat for whatever reason, like there just wasn't anyone interested, that seat just goes empty. But the way it was written originally is if the council cannot find someone from a certain county, then they're immediately in violation of statute. And obviously, we want to stay within statute as best as possible. So that was a concern. That just kind of needs to be rephrased, but geographic diversity is paramount. And to that point, we have our most northern members this year, and I have the spreadsheet in front of me, are from Littleton and Dalton. So we are trying to expand more northern, and those were actually the Secretary of State's appointments this year. In terms of shrinking or in terms of the governor making appointments, the point of the Governor's Youth Advisory Council came up. And I actually serve on that council as well. And the difference with GIAC is that it's specifically for the substance misuse and prevention. That is the only issue it tackles. So it's a completely different space.
Mr. Tebow, I'm going to ask you to
Of course.
suspend for just a minute.
Of course.
We have some special guests that are coming in to join our committee today, and I want to offer Senator General the opportunity to introduce her guests.
We want to welcome the Piermont School, that's grades 3, 4, and
Is it 5th and 6th? Yes.
5th and 6th. So, welcome. Glad you're here.
But welcome to ED&A. So you came in at a great time. We're actually discussing the Legislative Youth Advisory Council, which is a little bit older than where you guys are, but you'll be there soon, believe it or not. So we have a member of the Youth Advisory Council that's giving us some testimony and thoughts, and we're having a very good discussion in the committee. But Senator General, do you want to say a few more words, or they're your guests?
They are my guests. I guess the cool thing about the Piermont School, that's where my dad went to elementary school. So when I saw that you were coming today, that my heart, because I lost my dad a couple of years ago. So this is a very special time for me. But welcome, and certainly if you have any questions, I know have they been up to the?
Not yet. We're going to be making our way upstairs.
Okay, so you'll see my chair up there. It's the #1 seat when you first walk in. So I don't know who the lucky one will be that will get to sit in that chair. But welcome, and hope you have an awesome time, and we'll see you back here after you're all grown up and sitting in these chairs and serving the community. So welcome and thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Well, thank you, guys. We're happy to have you here. Anybody have a quick question before we let you go? No? All right. Well, enjoy your day here, and it's a really great place, so we're happy to have you come in. Thank you for stopping in.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
We'll give them just a minute.
Oh, thank you, sweetheart. Thanks for coming.
All right, Mr. Tebow, we're not going to litigate the whole bill again, but I'll give you another minute or so here if you have a couple more points you want to.
I appreciate it. So beyond that, though, I mean, there's the other concern, of course, or the primary concern was restricting the focus of the council. And I understand in the past it's been very unfocused. And a lot of that was, of course, before my time on the council. This is my 3rd year, and my first full year as chair. I took over probably around this time last year after the former chair, my predecessor, kind of totally abdicated his duties. He went completely MIA. So that left me in a spot where the council just fell into disrepair. Mm-hmm. There was no one working on it, so it was just myself and Representative Nelson, who you heard from last month, trying to rebuild everything, and that's where this bill originally came from, was trying to give us more structure, more support from the legislature. And one of the things that we have been focusing on is focusing on legislative areas important to youth. But to Representative Hill's point about that one particular bill, like even if we specifically stay in statute, these are the issues that we're going to focus on. That does not necessarily mean we're going to have the time to study every single bill and testify on every single bill in those areas. So statutorily restricting it just seems unnecessary in my view, because in the end, we're going to focus on the bills that we see as important, and then we're going to try our best to testify on them in person if we can, or at the very least send in a statement, which is typically what we do because, of course, getting out of school is hard. I mean, I got out of school today to be here to make sure I could watch this. But yeah, so
Well, Mr. Tebow, thank you. We
Of course.
appreciate your commitment to the Youth Advisory Committee and for taking the time today and come in and talk to us.
Absolutely.
And we certainly appreciate it.
happy to.
Stay involved, and we do appreciate your involvement. Thank you. All right, so we're back on the amendment here. We've got a little more information that's been provided to us from a couple of different sources. Is
Yeah,
it?
and I just want to just refocus that this amendment is only about section 1. Yeah, just section 1. That's it.
I understand, Senator.
yeah.
Just, it felt like
Just,
you
it
were
was
making a
getting,
lot of
we were
the
getting a
changes.
little
Yeah, I understand.
far afield of some of the other duties, and I didn't touch any of that, just section 1.
Any further discussion from the committee on the amendments?
Would the committee be open to, on line 12, saying the focus shall be to identify legislation that affects youth, including but not limited to?
Line 12 of your amendment? Is that correct? Yeah, okay. Sorry, just making sure. I had both filled in front of me. Senator Carson?
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Altshuler, for your work on this. But I think that because they've named the areas, I think what they're trying to do is to put up some rails and give direction. Because when it was open, it was everywhere. It's hard when you've got a number of individuals to focus in on something that everybody likes. I mean, we can do that. We get all these bills and we can look at them and we can focus in. But this is to educate these students. And it's important that they have direction. And that's what this particular section does. It provides the direction. And I think at this point, what they're trying to do is get this organization up and running again. And rather than have it just like free and open, we're going to discuss whatever we want, that's okay. I don't think that these students will only talk about these issues. I think once you get them talking, they'll start talking about the other things that they see and what they like, and things that they feel are important to them. But you've got to have a place to start, and I agree. I think these are, what in the House version anyway, is a good start. One of the other things that I have some concerns about, you're talking about the age of the legislators. I understand why you want really young people there, but this is for them to learn. And they are going to learn from the people who have been here for a while and have experience. And that tends to be some of the older folks. And, you know, I'm happy with what the House did. I think the House put an incredible amount of work into this. I know that for Representative Hill, this is something he's been involved with for a very long time, and it is something near and dear to his heart. And they're trying to get this thing up and running. I'd also like to point out the fact that you're going to allow online meetings. We don't allow online meetings for most boards. In fact, we've had legislation to expand it to other boards, state boards at a minimum, because again, you've got people coming from all over the state. It's hard to get a quorum. We couldn't get that passed. But in this instance, we're going to be setting a precedent and going to allow them to meet online. So I just want to bring that to your attention, to be aware of it. So don't be surprised if you see other boards next year come in and ask for the same privilege. So, just to be careful about that. But I applaud the work that the House did on this. I think they did a great job in putting this together. They had the time and the expertise in doing that. And while I appreciate your amendment, Senator, I'm inclined not to support it and to just go with the House version of the bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Altshuler, on of the original bill, on page 20, page 1, line 23 to 26, talks about the youngest members.
Wait, I'm sorry, on
On the original bill,
Introduced?
page 1, yep, the bill is as amended by the House.
amended by,
Yep.
page 1,
I'm sorry, as amended by the bill we received.
yeah.
Lines 23 to 26. It
Yes.
says 3 members of the House, one of whom shall be the youngest member of the majority party or their designee. Does that give them the flexibility if the youngest member doesn't feel they can fulfill that position to say, I'd like you to designate someone else?
Yes, but now you've given that youngest member like an obligation by virtue of them being elected as the youngest member
Okay.
that they didn't ask for.
And I'm,
So, why don't we just, and
I'm
since
fine
we're,
with the language you have in your amendment
Yeah.
relating to that. I think that's thoughtful and insightful that, I hadn't thought about the fact that it might be more of an imposition than they would want to take on, and I'm glad you brought that language.
yeah, I mean, one of the other youngest members of the House was pregnant when we were
Right,
there.
sure.
So,
Yeah.
with 2 kids at home, she wasn't in a position to be able to take on another responsibility that she would have been mandated by statute.
And thank you for your comments on that, Chair. I also, I just remain concerned about, in the bill we've received from the House, that all the appointment power has now just been concentrated in the Speaker. I mean, I think that we all probably, have certain constituencies like we're connected to, and other people would have different constituencies they're connected to. I think the point is to have as much diversity of thought and diversity of participation as we can here. And so it feels to me like removing all this other appointment power, I'm not sure why we would do that from a policy perspective.
Senator Carson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have an issue with that because now you're having one entity that's going to be responsible for the appointing of the actual members instead of spreading it out. That one entity is going to be responsible. If you have a bunch of them all trying to figure it out, one's going to do one at one time, another one's going to do it at another time when they have the time to do it, that have the time to look over the applications. It's better if you just have one entity that's going to do all the appointing at one time, so that way they can get up and running. Because you could have the Senate President make their appointment right away, but somebody else, or the House, they're like, oh, we're busy, we got 400 members, I don't have the time to look at this right now. And it could delay it. So I don't have a problem with giving the House the ability to appoint the members. I do know that there are Senate members that are appointed to this, and I would just be curious how many of the senators actually go, as opposed to the House members. Yeah, and it's because we're just much busier.
I think Senator Chanley has been in attendance. I think Senator Chanley has been in attendance, so I would hesitate to, say that the Senate has not participated.
I'm not talking
Yeah.
about right now, I'm talking over time. Because as you well know, we get appointed to a lot of different committees, and sometimes we can't be there. Whereas I think the House members tend to show up and they tend to participate. So I don't have an issue with giving it all to the House. That means the House is responsible for the appointments. And, again, I look at Representative Hill, who's been involved with this for a very long time. He's someone who's really dedicated and will make sure that it gets done. and it'll get done in one fell swoop, and he's not gonna have to run around to all these different entities saying, listen, we need you to do this. So, I'm okay with that provision, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Would the committee like to consider changing the language between line 23 and 26? I'm trying to come up with something that would incorporate Senator Altshuler's amendment from page 2 of her amendment. Something, I'm quite good at wordsmith in there yet. Some of you are better than that than I am.
So I think it would be the language from page 2 of the amendment, lines 1 through 3.
Well, it doesn't quite align with what the purpose of the lines 23 through 26, because they're appointing 3 members of the House. And I guess it could say 3 members from the House of Representatives, 2 of members of the House, 2 of whom would be, see, that's just gonna get clunky. That's why I was struggling.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I just,
Okay, so
I'm sorry,
maybe we
what
could
is,
just
what
take
is your question about?
So
Like,
I'm trying to incorporate your preference given to the willing younger members of the House of Representatives. I'm trying to figure out how to.
that's under
incorporate
council, yeah, it's under council administration though. That's not about,
Well,
it's a
that'd be-
different section.
that. It's a different section than.
Yeah, it's section 19K4. And it just highlights that, that they serve 2-year terms concurrent with their election.
In the original bill, where is that though? In the bill that we started with, the amended version from the House.
Well, let's see.
I think it was on line 27, Mr. Chair, because it talks about
It's in K2
over the course
and
of the
both.
legislative 2-year term, and then it goes on about the appointment of members. I think that,
Membership.
So in the bill from the House, it talks about the youngest member on line 24.
oh, yeah,
And that's where I was trying to fit it in there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're both, I think they're both in K2, both the amendment language and the,
Yes.
I think that's why the House version put in the word or designee. I think that's what we're trying to solve the same problem in different words. But
Right.
if Senator Altshuler's goal is to make sure that you're not requiring that youngest person to serve, that was why we added that or designee, so that that person would have the ability to opt out of it, and then it would go on to an additional person. Does that help the thought process?
Well, the way this reads is that the youngest members of the minority party and the majority party are statutorily bound to serve on this commission, and that they must appoint a designee. It does not say that the Speaker of the House.
I actually
Shall
tend
give
to agree.
preference.
That's the way it reads.
Yes, I
Yes.
mean, so it's it would be a statutory obligation based on the age of the youngest person elected in each party.
So let's,
if you cross out there, you just cross out the word there, and it'll be or designee.
or designee, there we go. If we took the word there out, would that solve it?
Perfect.
Or
Okay.
designee?
Yeah.
Because then I think that would solve it.
Yeah,
Sure. Yeah,
That's why I asked.
yeah.
All right, well, first off, we have an amendment.
Yeah.
Senator Altshuler's amendment is on the table.
yeah, and I'd like to just go back to page 1, lines 6, 7, and 8, because it is in the text of the bill, the RSA. The Legislative Youth Advisory Council is established to examine issues of importance to youth, such as education, employment, strategies to increase youth participation in local and state government, which I think speaks to the existence of a council. Safe environments for youth, substance abuse, emotional and physical health, foster care, poverty, homelessness, and youth access to state and local services. And the council shall advise the legislature on these issues and shall submit an annual report with any recommendations for future legislation. And changing that, so this is a complete change from why this Youth Advisory Council was established in 2006, and refocuses its entire reason for being to focus on just education, science and technology, transportation, labor, and substance misuse. Cutting out participation in local and state government, which, you know, kind of seems like, isn't that why we have a youth advisory council, to get more youth participating so that maybe they will be that youngest member of the House?
Senator Carson?
Thank you. Line 2, it's a RSA 19K:1, Legislative Youth Advisory Council. This is
Yes.
focusing them on what's happening in the legislature, not to be a catch-all to talk about everything that's going on. And again, this is about setting up those guide rails. It's not that they can't talk about those other things, but they should be focusing on what they're actually here to do, to learn about the legislative process. How do you learn about the legislative process? Well, you follow a number of bills. You identify those bills. And again, I think it narrows their focus down, and it helps them, I think, to learn better about the legislative process, as to, opposed to be just a very large group of people that are going to be discussing a variety of different things and accomplishing nothing.
Well, folks, we seem to be going around in circles here.
Well, I mean, just, if we're gonna just be, let's just be very clear about it, that the Legislative Youth Advisory Council, as designed in 2006, has, that you are abandoning the spirit and the letter of this RSA and changing it to be something that it didn't start out as, and if that's the intent, then own it. Let's just, fine. Just own that you don't want kids to talk about local and state government, that we don't want them to address issues of poverty, homelessness, and kids who are in foster care, or how to access local services. We're cutting that out. So we should just be honest about what we're doing here, is that we are refocusing and letting that, and saying, we'd love for you to be up here, we'd love you to participate in government, but only in these areas. And one of them is duplicitous to the Governor's Youth Advisory Council, which is just about substance misuse. So if that's the intention, then okay, let's just own it. I disagree.
That, it's fair that you have an opposing opinion.
Yeah.
We appreciate you sharing. I don't feel like we're having a productive discussion any further, so I think I'm going to move the vote on the amendment. I hope everybody has had the opportunity to give their viewpoints. So the motion right now is ought to pass on Amendment 1531. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Aye.
No.
Forgot to say aye.
Okay.
I'm in favor
You're
of
in
the
favor.
amendment.
All right, well, the amendment fails 3-2. Would the committee like to consider making a change to sections, lines 23 through 26, to cross out the word "their designee" to give more flexibility for the youngest
So moved.
members? All right, so
Second.
Senator Altshuler, excuse me, sorry, Senator Altshuler, I was looking at, Senator Carson is moving a committee amendment that would strike out, Kevin, we're going to strike out the word "there" on line 24 in front of designee, and "there" on line 25 in designee. Did I miss any other spots we need to fix?
Well, what about the start date?
Start date, where is
Page
that?
2, line 2.
Page 2, line 2.
December 1st.
We have discussion on that? Do we want to consider changing the start date? I hear both sides of the argument, and I guess I have mixed
Understand,
feelings on
in
it.
statute, and as, you know, brought to us by the House, this group has to hold a conference. They have, on line 2, page 2, line 20, conduct an annual seminar for council members regarding leadership, government, and the legislature. So, it is not in statute, but it sounds, that it needs to be done on the front end, but it sounds like it's something that should be done on the front end so that there is some understanding of the legislature and the government and how it's set up. So as they jump in to participate, they have a little knowledge under their belt. And my amendment that would bring it to August 1st so that they'd have the fall to do that before they begin with the legislature in January would give them some space to do that.
So I think the testimony we received, I'm sorry, I'm trying to review really quickly here. The contrary opinion to that was because it would have them appointed perhaps by a different leadership than what was going to be in the legislature after the November election, if my recollection is correct. I guess maybe, and I'm looking back and it doesn't appear that they've, I'm not sure that sorry, I thought I had a point on that somewhere here and I'm struggling to find it right now. I guess that was, like I said, I understand both sides of that one. How about this, Senator Altshuler, if we try this and let them appoint it for a couple of years as of December 1st and we find that to be clunky, I'd be more than willing to entertain changing it back. It would be a simple statute change to do so.
Simple, I don't know about that,
Well,
but
I don't
I
think
appreciate
we-
your optimism.
I don't think there'd be a lot of objection if we found the changes we made weren't working and weren't achieving the purpose. I think the whole point is we're trying to make a shake up and try something different because what we have isn't working, so.
So in the spirit of the making and shaking it up, would the committee be open to adding on line 6 of page 1, I'm sorry, line 7 of page 1, after the word youth, including but not limited to?
Or another suggestion I could make, sorry, Senator Carson.
No, that's
On
okay.
line 6, rather than doing that, say the primary focus, add the word primary. The primary focus shall be to identify legislation that affects youth in the areas of education. That would not prohibit them from looking at other things. It would just say this should be your primary focus.
Sure.
Would that be amenable to the committee?
Yeah, I guess.
All right, so Kevin will add the word primary on line 6 between the and focus. Further discussion on the amendment. So we have 3 changes. We're adding the word primary for focus on line 7, and we're removing the 2 words there from front of designee on lines 25 and where's the other one? 24 and 25. Thank you, Kevin.
So, Chair, I appreciate the spirit in which you're offering these changes. I mean, I would be remiss in not saying that I would love us to include lines 4 through 9 on page 2 of Senator Altshuler's amendment to retain these appointments by the governor and the Secretary of State. You know, with all due respect, I hear Senator Carson's points, but the House could also be late in their appointment duties. You know, we're setting a deadline here for the council to convene, and I continue to believe that diversity is a super important part of these youth convening. I mean, we want them to be exposed to each other's opinion, to, you know, to our diverse opinions, like to be exposed to everything around them. And so I just, you know, I remain concerned that concentrating that appointment power really could result in sort of one group being more involved in the Legislative Youth Advisory Council to the exclusion of, you know, opposing or diverse opinions.
Well, Senator, I guess I have a little more confidence in the integrity of whoever the speaker is from what party, that they would be reasonable and fair and balanced in their appointments to this. And I don't think this has to become a political tool for either party to use. I don't feel that's the goal of it.
But
And
it's being set up to be politicized.
I don't know that I agree. I think it's more being set up so that hopefully it'll be functional, because I think we've heard a lot of testimony that the current form is not, so.
And to be clear, Chair, my comments were not to malign the intent of anybody, but rather just that, like, it is a natural thing for us, again, to have connections into certain communities. And so,
Understood.
you know, having this diverse appointment authority is just, it's a natural procedural check on our own first people that come to mind.
I think I'm comfortable with the changes that we have in the original part of the committee amendment here, and give this a try and see how it goes. So, do we have further discussion on the committee amendment? Everybody's clear what the committee amendment is? All right. All in favor of the committee amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'll accept the committee amendment, yeah. But I can't support the bill, so,
All right, so
To
the,
be clear, that was 5-0.
no,
For-
was it?
For the amendment.
Oh, for the amendment, you were, oh, okay, yeah.
the amendment is 5-0. All right. I'll move on to pass as amended with the committee amendment.
Aye.
Aye.
Oh,
Do we have a second? All right. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Opposed.
All right, that passes 3-2. I'll take this one out. Okay. Let's see, House Bill 1140.
I'll move up pass.
Second?
Moved and seconded. We have discussion.
And 40.
I think the only issue here that we talked about was this certification, there sort of being a separate certification. But we talked through that in committee. In other words, involving another party to sort of certify during the process that the design was correct. But I think we talked through during the committee hearing in enough detail that I felt satisfied that that was an existing practice. So
Yes.
I don't have any concerns with this.
All right, further discussion.
Yeah, I just want to echo Senator Perkins Coca's thoughts and also bring in, because you said what I had on my notes. I want to, no, I'm glad, like, thank you, excellent. But also wanted to bring in and remind everyone that we have the voice of the New Hampshire Rivers Management Advisory Committee. And I think that their support speaks to the spirit and letter of this bill as written, and I'm, as somebody who has to take care of 2 septic systems, and one of them near water, I really, really appreciate the thoroughness with which this was written, so.
And additionally, I would add, it was, conversation with Mr. Trowbridge, confirmed that this is in no way going to stop a homeowner from having the ability to continue to try and do the cost savings of their own
Right,
install.
right.
So I think that was an important point too.
Right, that was section, I think, lines 14 through 17, which were the most important bits of this.
We have further
Yeah.
discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Consent? Second?
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Mayor Altshuler, would you like to take this one out?
Sure.
Thank you. All right, next will be House Bill 1328.
I'll move up to pass.
And I think we have an amendment on this.
So we need a second.
Yes, we should have an amendment number 1656S. This was, and I apologize, I'm a little thin on my memory here, I have to read it again. Okay, we added some, on the amendment, we added some clarifying language on adding volunteers and individuals serving on state and community response teams, medical reserve corps, disaster, animal, and health professional response teams. This was requested by HHS to add that language.
I'm sorry, what amendment? I
It's
have.
1656S.
Oh, I have I'm looking at 1956. I'm like, that's not what it says.
House
I
Bill
don't think
1328.
Yeah, I don't think I have that amendment. Oh, it's over here. There's more. All right.
So, Mr. Chair, I'd like to
15,
move
there we go.
amendment 1656.
Did I not move it? I'm sorry.
Volunteers.
You do not have a second
I'll-
on that pass.
Oh, we don't, all right,
Second.
all right. And then, how about if I move the amendment, it's fine. I'll
Then
move
I'll
the
second.
amendment, and Senator Carson will second. I'm sorry, I got a little ahead of myself there.
That's okay.
Questions on the amendment?
Response team, medical reserve corps, disaster animal.
It's just a further
It's
clarification.
clarifying language that HHS requested.
That HHS requested, okay.
Okay, and so, just so I'm clear, the addition in the bill is introduced and in the amendment on line 8 unintroduced and 12 on the amendment that says first responders are essential service providers. Is that to make sure they have freedom of movement during emergencies where we're asking people to stay off the roads?
Oh, I
So
will
that
have
they're
to refer
classified
back
as
to Mr.
essential
Cruz's
services?
testimony.
Ms. Rogers is here and she's shaking her head yes.
Yes?
Yes.
All right,
Thank you. All right,
thank you.
excellent.
Further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I'll move on to pass as amended.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Consent?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any volunteers to take this one, Senator Gendro? Would you like to take this
I
one?
will.
All right, thank you. All right, House Bill 1352.
I move on to pass.
Second?
Second.
Then I will offer Amendment 1713S.
I will move on to pass on the amendment.
Senator Carson seconds, since I moved it.
Okay.
Since I offered.
No, I'm getting ahead of you.
Yes, you are. This was agreed upon language by the stakeholders that were there, and essentially just allows the firefighters to have PPE in their turnout gear, but prohibits it from being in their station wear. Do you have any questions on the amendment?
No,
Yes.
no questions. I just wanted to state again that I had raised that this includes non-polymeric fire-resistant chemicals, which I don't think is truly the best standard nationally, but I know it's a compromise we've achieved at this time, and so hopefully we can continue to move this ball forward incrementally to protect all of our residents from the various ways that PFAS has infiltrated our lives.
Further discussion? Excuse me.
Preferable that we would adopt the definition of PFAS that is used by the EPA right now, to keep us in line with the federal government, and also not create, not create two lanes of chemical compounds that are redefined in two different spaces when we do have, I mean, New Hampshire has been a leader in creating PFAS response and prevention policy. And I think that this actually sets us back a little bit and and gets us out of line with the EPA.
Well, there's another House Bill 1649, as you're aware, that we've worked on some definitions of PFAS. And this was, again, language that we were still allowing our firefighters to have the gear that they needed right now. I know there's work going on in that industry all the time to try and improve their gear, but this protects them in the sense of keeping it from being in their turnout gear. So I think this was a good compromise, and I guess I would encourage the committee to support the amendment and then the bill as amended. Do we have further discussion? All right, all in favor of Amendment 1713S? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
All right, the amendment passes 4-1. Move on to pass as amended on 1352.
Second?
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent?
Consent.
It was 4-1, I think.
Did you vote against the bill?
No, I'm gonna, not a
as
hill I'm
amended.
gonna die on today.
All right, so we do have
That's
5-0,
all right.
correct? Just
Yep,
make sure.
yeah,
All right, I'm
that's
sorry,
fine.
I thought that's what
My
I heard.
bad.
Yeah, I voiced my objection to
Yes.
the redefinition.
Thank you. All right, so do we move consent?
Consent?
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll take this one up. All right, 1387.
I move on to pass.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Do we have discussion?
Not really. I know most of these changes were cleanup. There were a couple questions I asked in the hearing about, the fire protection engineer in place of the mechanical engineer on line 8, but I got those questions answered in the hearing. So, so I think this all seems like good
Further discussion?
changes.
Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Move consent?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Excuse me. Any volunteers to take this
I'll
one?
take it out.
Senator Perkins Coker. Okay, House Bill 1388 will be next, and there is an amendment to that I've provided.
I move on to pass.
Second, and I'd like to move Amendment 1970, 1970S. Essentially, what
One
this
more time on that number?
1970S, you may have a couple of them that got confused. We had a late change this morning for a technical change.
70S.
Okay.
1970 is the last amendment.
So are you not bringing forward 1935?
I'm not, because it was a
Okay, so
technical
just
change
want to
we
get it
fixed.
out of the
Yes,
circulation
that-
here. Was
that's
there
why-
another one too?
I'm not,
1930, oh, we got two 1935s. And
so
one on a
what
trade.
this amendment does is this merges the, I'm sorry, I'm trying to find my notes. It merges this bill with the Senate bill, and I think was it 405? 605, thank you. Merges the Senate Bill 605 that we passed earlier. And these were dealing with ethical changes that we had passed in 605. And if we passed them independently, it potentially created a slight conflict. By putting them together, we've eliminated that. And it puts one nice, clear, concise document forward that will help guide the Ethics Committee. And I know we have the chair of the Ethics Committee here, so if you do have any questions on the amendment, I will bring him up and have him help answer them. So
Yeah, would you mind if we invited Chairman Gordon for
I
just some
would,
brief
I would
comments?
absolutely welcome
Okay,
Chairman Gordon to
thank
come
you.
and talk to us. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for your invitation.
Did you have a question, a specific question for him?
I think as drafted originally with 1388, one of the concerns I just wanted to make sure we were protecting is the practical nature of, anyone that participates in a trade just feeling comfortable that they can participate in the legislature. And so I would love if you just made a couple comments about sort of how that piece is addressed with the legislation as amended, since I'm just getting it right now.
Okay. Well, first of all, I was directed by my committee, we met on Monday to come and address a specific change that addressed that specific issue. But I have to say, in this amendment, your chair has already addressed that particular issue, so it doesn't need to be addressed today. What you've done here today is the legislation that you passed in the Senate addressed specifically recusal when it relates to your employment circumstances. And what the House has done is not only address that particular issue, but they've addressed the issue when you have an individual conflict. And so they've incorporated those two parts. So there's a sort of a Roman numeral I, Roman numeral II part. The Roman numeral I basically said that you had to have a conflict of interest, or you had to have received some type of substantial direct benefit. And what the change that was required was to say it shouldn't be an or, it should be an and that change was made. So not only do you have a conflict of interest, but you also are going to get a direct and substantial benefit from the conflict, from the legislation. So I think that addresses the issue that we were very much concerned with, and I think you would be concerned with. For example, if you were in current use, prior to making that change, you would have had to recuse yourself. But now it says you have a conflict of interest. You might have a conflict of interest because you have property in current use, and you have legislation with regard to current use. But it also says that you have to get a direct and substantial benefit from it, which would be something other than the group at large that's going to benefit from
Okay.
the direct benefit really makes the difference.
Okay, and that's where we changed the or, and so the intent is to maintain the sort of standard of review that the benefit to the legislature would be separate from the benefit to sort of the industry as a whole.
Absolutely.
Or distinct from, okay.
Yep, absolutely.
Practical
And
standard,
for the
yeah.
committee, that's on page 2, line 2, to encourage direct and substantial benefit, because it said or previously, correct?
Okay.
Yeah, just
Right.
to make sure I'm correct, all right.
And that's the way that's the way the Ethics Committee, having met on Monday, we interpret that, is it has to be something over and above and consistent with our prior rulings as well.
Right, which is good to maintain consistency too. Okay,
Do we have any further questions?
Very
I do have a couple of suggestions, though.
Okay.
These are just minor things. If you look at your amendment on page 2, line 5, it says the legislature shall recuse themselves from participation. And on line 5, it says that cause of conflict only when the legislator or a member of the legislator's household satisfies all the following. I think the only is unnecessary there. And not only is it unnecessary, because it is when the legislature satisfies all the following, but it also, I think, creates a conflict with the above. Because this says only, and this relates to employment. So you have to recuse yourself only when you have this employment, as opposed to when you might have an individual benefit. So I think the only is unnecessary there, and suggest it be deleted. And the other minor change is on line 12. This has to do with recusal for the state budget and general revenue bills. And the way it says right now is a legislator shall not recuse themselves. And I think that there may be times when a legislator may want to recuse themselves. And if that's the case, I think it should read a legislator shall not be required to recuse themselves.
that's a good change.
But other than that, I don't have any suggestions.
I guess my last question, if I may, Chair,
May?
is as concerns section 5 of the amendment. So this would start on line 26 on page 3. As compared, it's the definition of special interest as compared with the version of the bill as amended by the House. Were there any changes made there? As I, again, am trying to review it in real time.
I am not, I don't know that I can answer that, but I think Representative Hill, who has worked,
No, it's from.
excuse me?
I'm sorry, I'm just kind of talking. I know where this is from. This is from a recent decision from the Ethics Committee.
Mhm.
So that's why this is in here.
And that was in our Senate bill language.
Yeah,
Correct.
it was in
Yeah.
the Senate bill
I don't
language.
believe this is any different than the Senate bill language that we currently
Yeah.
passed.
Okay, and I think we, just to reiterate, Chair, we had a comment from, I believe, Representative Lynn to remove the comma. It would appear on line 32 in your amendment on page 3, to remove the comma after compensation.
Okay, so.
What
So,
line is that?
It's line 32 of page 3, so it
32,
would read,
okay.
or person or organization, whether nonprofit or for-profit, by which the legislator is employed or from which the legislator receives compensation to act as.
No, I think if you remove the comma, it kind of,
Yeah.
it screws up the first part of the sentence.
Yeah, I'm trying to read the same thing. I'm trying
Yeah.
to remember what he says. I have a note that,
I
It was
remember making that
intended
statement, but as
to-
I read it, I think it would change the context of the sentence.
3 separate
Yeah.
issues.
Yeah.
And that's why it has to be separated with a comma.
I think grammatically it's correct, but I'm not the strongest on grammar.
okay,
so-
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't have enough notes to
Okay.
emphasize it. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have
Any
one,
further questions?
yeah, before you go. On the amendment, page 2, line 27, the person is a substantial contributor to the organization. And then there is a reference to substantial contributor on page 3. What is could you tell me where the definition of what that substantial contributor is? Because I see that it refers to contributing to a nonprofit, possibly, that receives contracts from the state.
I don't know that it's specifically defined in the proposed legislation.
Yeah,
But,
so that would, I just,
and I'm not sure I'm the one to
Yeah.
speak to the intent, so.
so if, what is substantial? Like to make a monetary donation to a nonprofit or to provide services in kind to a nonprofit that could be considered substantial. I understand that there's a space for contractors, which would,
I think this was part of your Senate legislation, was it not? You've already passed it.
I am not certain
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
all right.
oh, I see
Representative
head
Millie and
nodding.
Mr. Lambert are both saying yes, so that was part of the Senate Bill 604 that we passed previously. Okay, my apologies.
Which defines substantial contribution?
I don't know that there's a definition to substantial contributor. This is something we've.
No, the
previously-
legislation that's here in this proposal is
Yeah.
taken from the Senate Bill 605, which was
605,
passed by
I'm
the
sorry.
Senate
I keep
already.
using the wrong number, thank you. Senate Bill 605 that we passed previously.
Okay.
Yes.
So if somebody donated a piece of property to an organization for their use, would that qualify them as a substantial contributor and then have to recuse themselves from any legislation that may have to do with that organization's ability to obtain state contracts?
It doesn't require you. What that is a factor in determining whether or not you would have a conflict of interest. It doesn't necessarily in and of itself create a conflict of interest.
Okay.
Senator Carson?
Mr. Chairman, I think the language allows for the flexibility of the Ethics Committee to determine what is a substantial contribution. It could be in a variety of, can happen in a variety of different ways. And if we start naming these things, it's really going to tie their hands. I served on the Ethics Committee for, I think, 6 years. And believe me, they comb through everything, but they need the flexibility to make a determination what is exactly a substantial contribution. And they need that, so.
A $100 contribution to one organization could be substantial, where to another it might be insignificant.
yeah.
Yeah, or, making a donation of land and to, or monetary proceeds from a sale of land to LCHIP, and then subsequently voting on LCHIP. That's, that was the first thing that popped to mind, is
Depends
the,
on the circumstances.
Yeah.
And two, on the content
Okay.
of the LCHIP bill that you were voting on, that's where it gets dicey.
Yeah, and that's why we have the Legislative
Right.
Ethics Committee,
That-
because
that's
if
why
you
Mr.
have,
Lambert has a job.
yeah, if you have, I'll just say, if you have any questions, go see Mr. Lambert. They will, and if you really are concerned, you write a request and it will be considered by the Ethics Committee, whether or not you can or you cannot do it. So, I mean, I wish people would read, right now it's purple, the purple book that talks about ethics and what people can and can't do. The answers are, to a lot of people's questions, are actually in that book. But people,
We think of it as lilac.
oh, it's lilac, okay.
The,
Isn't this like lilac month or something?
Is that a softer version of purple?
Yeah, oh, see, that's
There it
what you
is.
have.
No,
And
that-
everybody should have one.
And this circumstance doesn't apply just generally to legislation. What this relates to the Senate bill, which applies just to your employment relationship. So it's a substantial influence as part of your employment. So if you gave this to your employer, that would show substantial influence over the organization.
All right, further questions for Chairman Gordon? Thank you so much for coming in, Dave, we appreciate it.
My pleasure. It's nice to see you all.
Your guidance and insight, good to see you back.
Thank you.
Hold on, before, is Susan here?
No, Susan's not here today.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
All right, so would the committee like to entertain a committee amendment with the suggested changes that
Yes.
Chairman Gordon?
I move for the committee amendment with the suggested, recommended changes.
All right, so Kevin, the changes are on line 5, removing the word only.
So, I'll second.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were saying he needed a second. I got you.
No, no,
I'm sorry.
we need a second.
Yes.
Page 2, line 5.
Removing the word only, yep.
And then page 2, line 12, a legislator shall not, and then add be required.
Two.
Be required
Be
to.
required two. Yep. And so that will be the committee amendment, and the remainder of the language will be taken from my amendment 1970. Do we have further discussion on the committee amendment? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And then I'll move on to pass as amended.
I'll second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Move consent.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Senator Carson, would
Yep.
you like to take this one out?
Yep.
Sure, give it to Kevin.
This is the decision tree that we're working on to give to new legislators.
Oh, yes.
So that they can not have to deal with the lilac book. And be able to maybe guide themselves whether
Oh,
they
okay.
have a problem.
Thank you, Representative. I
Thank
have
you.
seen that.
And we will look for input from you.
Awesome. I have seen it, and it's pretty, should be very helpful, I think.
It's very nuanced.
All right, 1474 will be our next bill.
I move I pass.
I will second, and then I want to offer an amendment. You should have amendment 19, I want to move amendment 1956S.
I'll second.
All right, so we heard a lot of discussion on this bill when it was heard. Thank you, Representative. And boy, I came away from this hearing thinking there's just no way I can find a way to support this bill. There's a lot of tension among the different, is tribes the right word?
Tribes is good.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Between the tribes, and gosh, we had Senator Waters come in with an amendment, and then we had members of the tribes speaking against the amendment, speaking against the bill, and coming in with changes of their own, and I fully came away from this hearing feeling like this commission needs to go back and sort this out amongst themselves. But here's the problem. So I was prepared to offer an interim study motion on this bill, but in further conversation and rereading the testimony and what was offered in the bill, I came to the conclusion that if nothing else, we need to fix the quorum issue, because the commission can't go back and fix it because they can't get members enough to meet. And so line 1718 of the original bill is exactly what this amendment is. It's a replace all, that we just do one thing with this bill. We fix the quorum issue and say to them, you only need 50% of the appointed members plus one in order to meet. And that takes it away from being the 9-member threshold that was required for quorum. And essentially is saying to them, look, go meet, go fix this, take care of it, have the discussions and fix it yourself in amongst where the issues really lie. I really hate to, at this time, use a legislative sledgehammer to fix this problem. I really think if we give them the ability to make it easier for them to meet, that they can fix this themselves. And so that is the reason that I brought amendment number 1956. Further discussion on the amendment.
Just for my records, who seconded this amendment?
All right, seeing no discussion. All in favor of amendment 1956S?
Aye.
Keep saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? I'll move on to pass as amended.
Second.
Further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
I move consent.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Senator Gendro, would you like to take this out? All right, folks, we're on our last bill, 1585.
I move I pass.
Are we already feeling nostalgic, guys?
I'll
I'm not sure
second.
nostalgic is what's coursing through my veins right this moment. All right, we have a motion and a second. Discussion on the bill.
Oh,
I have an amendment.
Oh, you have an
You guys
amendment,
have a
okay.
copy of that?
All right,
yeah, it's 1818S.
Yes.
Okay,
I gotta find it, sorry.
here, you can have mine.
I
have
shoot.
two.
Do you? All right.
It is that.
Oh,
Yes.
it is?
extra copies here, but it
That's
seems
right.
like we don't need them. Okay, so we were, one moment.
Somebody second the amendment.
So
Oh,
Senator
second.
Perkins Polka is moving, Senator Altshuler is seconding.
Thank you, Kim.
Here we go.
So we were about to accept this bill last time.
That's right, I
and,
remember now.
I just wanted to raise that the committee hearing brought to light that, there were some folks that were being authorized to, make injections that, just as a matter of practice, exceeded the scope of, others, and I'm not speaking to this very well because it's been a couple weeks since we had this issue, but, I believe the intent was that medical nursing assistants are non-clinical. Okay, guys, I'm gonna try to figure out these notes and get this together. But the point was that there was an amendment that Representative Grody and Representative Weber had co-sponsored in the House that never got adopted to address the fact that, that injectable medications really should be restricted, I believe, to licensed nursing assistants and not this new position, a certified assisted living medication aid. And so the amendment in front of you that I've drafted is that language that Representative Grody asked us to adopt. Elizabeth Eaton has reviewed it from the Board of Medicine and confirmed that it's the right language. And so I would just ask you to adopt that to make sure that we've correctly given authority to the right medical technicians and professionals.
So do we know exactly what it changes? It looks like in section 6, there's some changes,
Thank you.
which would be page 2 of the amendment. Trying to really quickly read it. Oh, I think it removes letter B of paragraph 15 under section 6 is what it looks like it does. Saying
So starting on lines
injectable
31.
medication shall be limited to medications administered under a manufacturer pre-filled auto-injector. A pen shall not be include injectable or a medication drawn from a container as a vial. Looks like that language is gone.
Yes, that's exactly right. And the reason that's problematic, thank you, I just found my notes, you gave me a minute. The licensed medication nursing assistant, a licensed medication nursing assistant cannot administer injectable medication, which includes auto injectors or pen injectors. And so the CALMA position would be able to administer a route of medication which a more qualified individual cannot administer. The pen injectors themselves are complicated. They require a level of clinical knowledge than the 40-hour course that the CALMA would earn. And putting such specific language in statute hinders the ability to effectively keep up with developments in medicine and nursing. So it really belongs in rulemaking.
Oh, okay, so,
Senator Carson?
So is it your intent to have them decide that in rulemaking?
Yes.
Okay.
Senator Altshuler?
so the rulemaking would be around non-injectable medications that are dispensed.
Non-injectable medications that are.
No, injectable.
Okay,
Pre-dispensed.
Yes.
Pre-dispensed injectable medications.
Yes.
I'm looking at Doug.
And that's
Is he
gonna go
shaking
under
his head
rules.
In any direction?
That's gonna go under rules.
Yeah.
Yes, okay, I think, I remember talking to Representative Grota, and now, thank you.
Yeah.
It's coming back.
Because sometimes that's the way they get them.
Yep.
A syringe will be already filled.
Doug, do I get a thumbs up on this amendment, that you guys are good with this? Okay.
Okay, there you go. So we have a motion to pass.
We do further discussion on amendment 1818? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Senator Perkins Coker, do you want to move on pass as amended?
Sure, I move ought to pass as amended on our last bill.
Senator Carson?
I'll
seconded?
second.
All right, thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
I think Senator Perkins Coker wants to take this one out, too.
I'll move consent.
Oh, we're gonna move consent,
Yes.
that's right.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Now Senator Perkins Coker.
I'm happy to take it out, yes. Okay,
Well, that is our final bill, and I want to say a big thank you to the committee, because you've all made my job as easy as possible.
Well, thank you for your leadership.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, you did a great job.
We've all worked very well together as a unit, and getting through the things we had to get through, and I very much appreciate it, and it really has been an honor to be the chair of this committee. So, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much.
With that,
Thank you.
is there a motion to go out of exec?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Kevin, do you have everything you need for all of these committee amendments that we made? If not, yeah. Anything else? Okay.
For HP. And just, no, just keep bringing it up. I did not see it.
Kendra,
General, all right.
only one goes on the regular calendar.
Right,
know.
we did a fantastic job.
Very good.
So, Kevin, thank you for all of the work you did for our
well done.
committee. You deserve a round of applause. All right,
For dealing with
that-
us.
ladies and gentlemen, we are done.
Nice. Congrats.
And we are dismissed for today.